थोड़ा सा अलाउड कर। Hello everyone. A big hello to all the students joining us from DPS Varanasi, Nasik, and Lava Nagpur. This is a series of virtual sessions to foster creativity and learning. At DPS, we are keen to introduce young minds to various themes, thoughts, and perspectives so that they understand the world better and its problems. During this time of global crisis, this series, Breaking Barriers, aims to bring together articulate speakers from various fields of arts, music, sports, drama, science, and beyond. Our today's speaker needs no introduction. Shri Devdutt Patnaik ji is being trained in medicine with more than 15 years in healthcare and pharma. He plunged straight into his passion, an author, many bestsellers, My Gita, My Hanuman Chalisa, to name a few. He is a TED speaker. His TED talk, East versus West, has had more than 22 lakh views. Sir's series, Devlok, has been viewed by people all over the country. His most recent initiative, Tea Time Tales, has been much appreciated by people all over the globe. We are delighted to have you, sir, with us today. Today's session, the talk is going to be about your Gita, and Devdutt ji will converse for 25 minutes, and then we will take up question and answers. All of you who have joined us on Zoom can use the Q&A tab to post your questions, and all of you who have joined us on the live stream can use the comment section, and I will try my level best to take as many questions as possible. Sir, the audience is eagerly waiting to hear your words of wisdom. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Just confirming that you can hear me clearly. It's all okay? Yeah?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So today's topic I have given, is your Gita. Why have I used the, if you have been reading grammar properly in English sessions, agar aap vyakaran padhte ho, how many of you all, I hope you all know Hindi as well as English. To succeed in the world, you must know at least 3 languages. You must know your mother tongue. You must know your the language, the maximum language spoken in India, which is Hindi, and you must know the international language of English. ये तीनों भाषा नहीं जानोगे, and you should be able to move between these 3 languages very easily. In fact, I always tell people, I check whether people have understood an idea by asking them to translate it in Hindi. So I always Hindi mein samjhao. If they speak in Hindi, I'll say Angrezi mein samjhao. And that is how I know that they've understood things properly. So that's a little tip for you to remember. If you can translate things properly, you know that you have understood it correctly. So physics ho, chemistry ho, biology ho, any subject that you have, know that can you translate it correctly means you have understood it correctly. Now, today we'll talk on the Gita. Now, the Gita is the most important book in India. It's become very popular in the last 100 years. 100 साल के पहले इसको ज़्यादा value लोग just religious लोग देते थे, लेकिन ये पूरा mass movement नहीं था. It was not a mass movement. Everybody did not easily get access to the Gita before 100 years. It was available only to the educated, to the elite, to the people who were interested in scriptures, who understood Sanskrit a bit. Most people understood Gita through songs of Abhanga. In Maharashtra, for example, the Tukaram's Abhanga, Jnaneshwari was written in Marathi. So they would know it through local regional languages. Odia, there is Gitas written in Odia, there are Gitas written in Tamil. Songs are written which contain some of the ideas from the Gita. But the Gita itself became popular about 100 years ago, and now we have access to it, right? So for example, my book is there out there in the market. It's called My Gita, and I call it My Gita for a very specific reason. And this session is called Your Gita for a very specific reason. I use this possessive pronoun, my. Why? Because We are human beings. हमको सब कुछ समझ में नहीं आता है. This is being told by Krishna, who has obviously had he is God. He seems to know everything. We are not Krishna. We try our best to understand what he's saying, and we share it with our friends and relatives. So I can only share what Devdutt Patnaik understands. I cannot explain what Krishna actually said. Right? Because the language is different, the explanation could be complicated. This is being told to a soldier in a battlefield. You are not a soldier, you are not in the battlefield, I am not in the battlefield. So hamara jo context hai, where we are standing, is very different. So I prefer to say that I am sharing my understanding of the Gita with you. Now, based on what you listen from me, you will understand something and you will create your own Gita to help you live your life. Right? So in this session, I will share some important points that you can apply in your life, and that becomes your Gita. You could discuss with each other and improve your Gita, because over time, the more we revise, the more we understand, our understanding becomes better and better and better and better. And therefore, there is no one understanding. Knowledge is continuously expanding. This rule is something that we must remember, that we know something, हमको कुछ अभी याद है, कल को कुछ और पता चलेगा. Third day you'll know something more. On the first day you enter a physics class or you're studying mathematics. On the first day you know something. Second day you know something more. Third day you know something more. तो आपका knowledge expand होता जाता है. So expanding your knowledge on any subject is the same as expanding your knowledge on Gita. So today I'll share my Gita with you, and hopefully you will learn yours. And remember, when you say my Gita, it is not fixed. It is continuously expanding over time. It's not fixed at all. It is continuously expanding. So you should always discuss with people. It is, one of the lessons I have learned, and this is something that we must understand, is that when somebody says, this is what I understood from the Gita, you must never argue with them. You must always say, Acha, this is what you understood, this is what I understood. So at the end of the conversation, both of you will have two ideas and your mind has expanded. When you argue, what happens is you say, I am right, you are right, I am right, you are right. When we argue, then we don't listen to other people. And when we don't listen to other people, at the end of the argument, you are still left with only one idea, either your idea or their idea. And therefore your mind has not expanded. So always remember the system in Gita. The Gita knowledge transmission is through a word called samvad. हमेशा संवाद कीजिए, विवाद मत कीजिए. Vivad means argument, where you say I am right or you are right and we keep fighting with each other. It is a tug of war. So avoid doing a tug of war. Do samvad, not vivad, samvad. In samvad, I listen to what you are saying, you listen to what I am saying, and by listening to each other, we improve our truth. We improve my Gita. Yes? So this is the first lesson of the Gita. First lesson of the Gita is everybody understands the world differently, and you improve your understanding of the world by listening to other people. That is why it is called Shruti, Suno, listen, listen, listen. Or Darshan, look, look, look. Listen to what people have to say. And that is what is happening. You know how this Gita begins. So Gita is a conversation between Arjun and Sri Krishna in the middle of a battlefield called Kurukshetra. And it is one of the stories within this big epic called the Mahabharata. And this entire Mahabharata has 18 chapters. So the story goes that Ved Vyas, long time ago, there was a sage called Ved Vyas. And he collected all the hymns of the Vedas. So the rishis used to compose these hymns called the Vedas. These jo hymns hote hain, the chants, the shlok hote hain, he collected it and he organized it in a very organized, table. Like for example, you take files and you have a timetable, you have books. How do you organize it on your bookshelf? You have physics books on one side, chemistry books on the other, then you have literature, you have math. In the same way, Ved Vyas took all the books and all the subjects of the Vedas and he organized them very properly. That is why he's called Vyasa, means the one who organizes things. So he organized everything, he compiled everything, he put everything together, and he put a very clear organization together. But then he realized that Vedas are very difficult to understand for the common people. जो जन सामान्य है, ordinary people will not understand the Vedas. So he decided to tell it in the form of a story. तो उन्होंने महाभारत की रचना की. He composed the Mahabharata to communicate Vedic ideas. That is why the Mahabharata is called the fifth Veda. So there are four Vedas: Rig Ved, Sam Ved, Yajur Ved, अथर्व वेद. इसके अंदर जो ज्ञान है, इसको उन्होंने महाभारत एक कहानी के माध्यम से उन्होंने एक्सप्रेस किया है. उसके अंदर जो ज्ञान है महाभारत के अंदर एक फर्दर गिवन इन द फॉर्म ऑफ द गीता. So it is, people have explained this in a very poetic way. They say the Vedas are like grass. Mahabharata is like a cow. The cow eats on the grass, and then from this cow you take the milk out, which is the Gita. So Gita doodh hai. So Gita is the doodh, Mahabharata is the cow, Veda is the grass. So how do you get access to the grass? Now you'll say, I want to understand the Vedas. They'll say, doodh le lo. When you drink the milk, you will understand the Vedas. So by reading the Gita, you understand the Vedas. Simple. Krishna is telling the Vedas to Arjuna. But really, when you read the Vedas, we are not listening to Krishna exactly. We are listening to Sanjay. Sanjay is the charioteer. वो एक सारथी है Dhritarashtra का. So the Mahabharata is a story of a war between 100 cousins who are fighting over property with 5 brothers. So 100 Kauravas are fighting their cousins, the 5 Pandavas, with over property. So ये जमीन जायदाद की लड़ाई है. So many of y'all would know, in families people fight over money, over property. We keep fighting over these things. तो प्रॉपर्टी के ऊपर लड़ाई हो रही है और जमीन के ऊपर लड़ाई हो रही है. On one side there are the 100 Kauravas, on the other side there are the 5 Pandavas. The 100 Kauravas have their father is called Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra is blind, वो अंधा है और वो अपने राजमहल में बैठा है. He is sitting in the palace और उसके बगल में next to him is Sanjay. Sanjay is his charioteer. Sanjay has a magical ability. वो एक जगह में बैठ के he can see what is happening far away in the Kurukshetra battle. And the Gita begins with Dhritarashtra telling Sanjay कि Sanjay, what is happening? Dharma Kshetra Kurukshetra में. So he uses the word Dharma Kshetra Kurukshetra. He says, वहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है? Tell me what is going on. And Sanjay then describes the events in the battlefield, and what he begins with is the Gita. That is how the Gita comes to us. And what he says is that in the battlefield, he is observing something very peculiar. He is observing that Arjun is having a crisis. He is supposed to start the war. वो युद्ध शुरू करने के बगैर उसने अपने अस्त्र नीचे रख दिए. He doesn't want to fight. He is saying, how can I fight my own cousin brothers? मेरे सामने the 100 Kauravas are my brothers. How can I fight them over property? This is not correct. This is, I don't want to fight. I feel peace is better than violence. Right? So what happens is, this is the most important event that happens in this is chapter 1 of the Gita. The first chapter is explaining the problem. What is the problem? 100 brothers have taken the property of 5 brothers. तो 100 भाई जो हैं उन्होंने हड़प लिया है property of the Pandavas. The Pandavas are fighting the war to forcibly take it back. What they believe is theirs. जो उनका है लेने के लिए जा रहे हैं. When the fight is about to begin, the third brother, Arjun, says, how can I fight and kill my cousins over property? ये ठीक नहीं है. This is not right. It is violence. I will not fight. I would rather be a beggar. And Krishna is having a conversation with him and telling him why he needs to fight. Right? So the why is fighting important. Now, this is a very interesting story because we are asking a very difficult question. You know, at one level, you'll say, violence hone wala hai, ladai hone wala hai. Surely peace is better than war. Simple sentence. Peace is always better than war. But somebody will say, is injustice better than justice? Because ये पांच भाई का जो जमीन है, the property which is theirs has been taken over by the cousin, and the cousin is not giving it back. So for the sake of peace, are you willing to live with injustice? This is the question. इसको धर्म संकट कहते हैं. So write it on a notice board. You will write on one side, you will have the word justice. On the other side, you will have the word injustice. So justice and injustice. On the other side, you have war and peace. Now ask the question. What do you want in life? Do you want justice or do you want injustice? Do you want war and do you want peace? This becomes a very, very difficult question to ask. इसको धर्म संकट कहते हैं. So this is how the Gita begins, with a dharma sankat. And Krishna starts to explain the idea systematically over the next 17 chapters. So 17 chapters are there, so 18 chapters. Now it is very interesting that Gita has 18 chapters, Mahabharata also has 18 chapters. And the Mahabharata war is fought for 18 days, 18 din ke liye. And there are 18 armies involved. So 18 armies are fighting for 18 days, and the war, in a story which is about 18 chapters, and the greatest conversation in this great epic has also 18 chapters. What is the meaning of 18? So to understand this, we have to understand the concept of the Krishna makes this very interesting comment at one point in the story, in his discourse. He says, Navadvarapura. Navadvarapura. The city with 9 gates. City with 9 gates means your body. हमारा जो शरीर है इसको नवद्वारपुरा कहते हैं वेद में. Why is it 9? It's a city with 9 gates. 2 gate, 2 eyes, 2 nose, 1 4 हो गया, 2 ears 6, mouth 7, 8 is your genitals and 9 is your anus. So 9 gateways of the body. ये हमारा शरीर को हम नवद्वारपुरा कहते हैं. When 2 people are sitting with each other, 9 plus 9, 18 हो गया. So 18 represents relationships. Life is about relationships. If 2 people are sitting, are you going to do samvad or are you going to do vivad? Are you going to say my truth is better than your truth? That is vivad. Or are you going to say my truth is going to get better by listening to your truth? Samvad. Vivad, samvad. So see how it is all related. Veda is about relationships. How do I deal with people? How do I live with people? At the heart of it is the idea of dharma. So dharma is a very important word. What does dharma mean? Very simple. In the jungle, strong dominates the weak, जिसको हम law of the jungle बोलते हैं. In English we use the word law of the jungle. In Sanskrit they use the word matsya nyaya, law of the fish, जहाँ बड़ी मछली छोटी मछली को निगल जाती है. The strong takes care, overshadows the weak. ये जंगल में ठीक है, जानवरों के लिए ठीक है. Animals if behave this way, it is perfectly fine. But if humans behave like animals, it is adharma. Because we are human beings. हमारे पास नवद्वारपुरा है और इस पुरा के, why is it called a city with 9 gates? Who is living inside this gate? Inside this gate is the human being. We live inside our body and we have a very special ability. We have the ability to take care of weak people. We have the ability to help the helpless. In the animal kingdom, the strong eat the weak. But in the human beings are the only creatures who have the capability. We may or may not do it, that's different. But we have the capability of helping weak people. We have the ability to help the helpless people. हम उनकी सहानुभूति कर सकते हैं, आत्मीयता दिखा सकते हैं. We can help people. We cannot, in the jungle when a bird is flying and if the bird's wings break, no other bird will come to help that bird. They will leave it alone and they'll all fly away. In the jungle, if the deer is walking and the deer's leg gets broken, the other deers will come for some time to help, but they cannot really help. उनके पास hospital नहीं होता है, they can't do anything. They will walk away. When the tiger gets old, nobody takes care of an old tiger. The old tiger starves to death. But in human society, किसका हाथ टूट गया, हम उसको protect करते हैं, हम उसका देखभाल करते हैं. पैर टूट गया, we take care of old people, we take care of young people, we take care of sick people because human beings are capable. Right? Now that is dharma, the ability of the strong to take care of the weak. Now remember, Mahabharata is the story of 100 brothers taking care of 5 brothers. The 100 brothers, their father is still alive. Unka pitaji zinda hai. He's Dhritarashtra. He is their father. They live in a palace. Or the 5 brothers jo hai, unke pitaji nahi hai. Pandu is dead. They are orphans. So 5 anarth hai aur 100 rajkumar hai. Who is strong and who is weak in this relationship? Who should take care of whom? Write this down. Now, the next thing to write down in your paper is one side you have 5, the next side you have 100. 100 लोग हैं और दूसरे तरफ 5 अनार्थ हैं. The 5 brothers have got 7 armies. They have 7 armies, and the 100 Kauravas have 11 armies. Who is strong in this relationship? 100 princes with 11 armies or 5 orphans with 7 armies. Who is the strongest? Who should take care of whom in dharma? Is it good to share? Is sharing good? How much should you share? What does the Kaurava say? We will not share a needle point of territory. हम बिल्कुल नहीं देंगे, एक सुई के जितने जगह है उतना भी नहीं देंगे. We will not share property. That is the problem. Krishna says compromise कर लो ना, peace के लिए 5 गांव दे दो. Don't give the whole property. Give 5 villages. Peace के लिए, for peace give make compromise. And the Kauravas say no, we will not compromise at all. We don't mind fighting, but हम लोग एक भी drop नहीं देंगे. That is when Mahabharata happens. So to understand Gita, you must understand this context of the Gita. This is why human relationships are happening. We are talking about dharma. This is dharma sankat. And this is what Dhritarashtra is saying, dharma kshetra. Right? So this is broadly the understanding. And the arguments move in a very interesting way. I will not go into Sanskrit verses and all that. It is very complicated. Let us go to the simple answers which we are getting. Krishna says, but remember, it is not so simple, right? You will say, yes, the Kauravas have to take care of the Pandavas, but the Kauravas are not taking care. Now, what should the Pandavas do? The Pandavas go to fight. When the Pandavas go to fight, Arjun says, Are Bapre, ye to mere bhai hain. मैं अपने भाई सगे संबंधी को मार कैसे सकता हूं? They are my brothers. This is unethical. It is immoral. So war versus peace, justice versus injustice, adharma versus dharma, isko problem ho gaya. This is why the Gita is such an exciting book. Their answer is not simple. Answer is difficult. Because in order to get justice, you have to do war. If you do war, then तुम बोलोगे अरे युद्ध किया है, हिंसा से तुम न्याय ले रहे हो, क्या ये ठीक है? Because war never solves a problem, it creates other problems. लड़ाई झगड़ा से प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व नहीं होता, कुछ नया प्रॉब्लम आ जाएगा. लेकिन अगर तुमने लड़ाई नहीं की तो फिर अधर्म स्थापित हो जाएगा. So what to do? So Krishna goes into these complex and he gives 3 solutions. Now I will explain this in brief and then we will have question answer session. So the 18 chapters are divided into 3 groups. The first 6, so if you look at the book carefully, The second chapter and the last chapter will give you summaries of the solution. Summary milta hai. If you don't want to read the whole Gita, just read chapter 2 and chapter 15. That's it. Chapter 18. You will get the summary. Because Krishna does a very simple trick. He says solution pehle wo quick summary deta hai. Summary deta hai solution ka. Uske baad he expands the solution. And then in the end he gives a summary. He reinforces the solution. This is how you explain things. You first give a summary. Even in an exam when you're writing, you first give a quick summary, then you expand, and then you repeat the summary. This is a very good method of communication which you find Krishna following. It says, tell me what you are going to tell me, and then tell me what you have told me. It is a very powerful method of communication. पहले बताओ क्या बताने वाले हो, उसके बाद बताओ तुमने क्या बताया, which is what Krishna does, right? So now that becomes what are the three solutions he gives? First is, the three things is Karma Yoga, first 6 is Karma Yoga, uske baad Bhakti Yoga, uske baad Jnana Yoga. The word Yoga ka matlab kya hai? Understand the word Yoga, you have to just remember one thing. What is the opposite of Yoga is Viyog. Viyog is separation, Yoga is union. Viyog is separation, Yoga is union. Union of what? Relationship. Two human beings ka relationship. Yoga between two people. Navadvarapura. One human being and the other. Pandav and Kaurav. Krishna and Arjun. Two people. इनके बीच में योग संवाद से होगा या विवाद से होगा is the conversation. दो लोग हैं. So योग, all relationships can be connected on 3 bases. Karma, action. Bhakti, emotion. Gyan, knowledge. Karma means hands. जो कर रहे हो, करना. What are you doing? Bhakti is feeling, heart. विश्वास क्या है? तुम्हारे दिल के अंदर क्या है? और ज्ञान inside your head. Knowledge क्या है आपके पास? What knowledge do you have? 3 things. So all human beings, ये नवद्वार पूरा जो हमारे पास है शरीर में we have the ability to do, we have the ability to feel, we have the ability to think. All 3 are important. One is not superior to the other. All 3 are important. Action, feeling, and thought. All 3. Machine भी action करता है, but machine cannot think, machine cannot feel. Right? Robo भी action करता है, computer भी action करता है. Computer में, but it cannot feel, it cannot think. It can process, it can't think. Navadvara, human beings can feel and think. So Karma Yoga, he says, first solution is do your duty. Don't think of results. Simple solution. अपना काम जो करना है करो, ज़्यादा सोचो मत. You are a prince, you are a soldier, you are supposed to fight. Don't worry about victory and defeat, justice and injustice. Just do what you are supposed to do right now. At this moment, you are supposed to do your job. अपना काम करो, ठीक से करो. So he is a very practical solution. ज़्यादा दिमाग मत लगाओ, काम करो. Exam के time में nervous हो गए, ज़्यादा मत सोचो. Don't think of results. Don't think of whether you'll get first rank or second rank or third rank. Just focus on your studies when you have to study. When you have to get ready, get ready. When you have to go to the class, when you get the exam paper, focus on the first question, then the second question, then the third question. Don't think whether you will pass, fail, get a gold medal, get promotion. Just action. Don't think of the reaction. अपना काम करो. Just focus on your work. That is Karma Yoga. फल की चिंता मत करो. So this is simple understanding. Second is now Bhakti Yoga. This is the middle part of the book. Because when Krishna वो ये बोलता है तो अर्जुन बोलता है नहीं मेरे को नहीं होगा. You are very easy to tell me what to do. I can't. My heart is beating very fast. I can't think. I can't breathe. My mouth is dry. So he says अच्छा विश्वास करो. विश्वास करो कि someone out there cares for you. There is a big picture out there. कोई तो तुम्हारे बारे में सोच रहा है. वो मैं हूं. I am thinking of it. तो यहाँ पे कृष्ण विश्वरूप लेते हैं. He takes the form of God and says, he takes this mighty form with 1,000 heads and 1,000 hands and 1,000 legs and says, I know the future, I know the past, I know the present. Just trust me. Have faith. विश्वास रखो. So to have faith that there is something, somebody's thinking about you. So don't say somebody cares for you. Right? So that is the second point that is made. So first point is action without, don't think about the results. Second point he says is Vishwas rakho, faith, that there is meaning behind the madness. Just don't worry about it. Whether you fail, whether you succeed, everything has a purpose. So you just go with the flow. Trust. Right? Trust becomes an important word. Third point is Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga mein, he starts going slightly more sophisticated. Na bhi Jnana Yoga knowledge hai, to wo thoda scholar batch ke liye, thoda intellectual baatein aati hai. Here he starts talking about rebirth. He says, the whole world is very different. And there are many things happening in the world. He starts talking about how every human being is different. Gunas, he talks about the three gunas. He says, every human being is different. Diversity exists in the world. Everything is unpredictability in the world. Every living creature is born and dies, but he's reborn again. So he talks about rebirth. The rebirth concept becomes important. He says, we die and we are reborn, we die and we are reborn. And because we are afraid, hamare andar bhaya hai, we are scared ki what is mera, kya hone wala hai. When a baby gets scared, they will hold to the, it's called a comforter. वो अपने जो pillow होता है या blanket होता है उसको पकड़ के रखते हैं, doll को पकड़ के रखते हैं. वैसे ही when we get scared, we hold on to things. We get attached. हम छोड़ते नहीं है. जैसे दुर्योधन छोड़ नहीं रहा है कि I will not give a needle point of territory. He says, look carefully at Duryodhan. वो घबराया हुआ है. He's scared. Look at this. Krishna is telling, don't be angry with the Kauravas. वो लोग बुरे लोग नहीं है. वो डरा हुआ है. वो सुन नहीं रहा है. Don't hate the enemy. Understand the enemy. तो अभी ज्ञान, दर्शन. Look, open your third eye, look at him carefully. He's nervous, he's scared, वो बात नहीं सुन रहा है. The only way to work right now is to attack and to be a warrior. So he's saying, don't hate your enemy. गुस्सा मत करो. Control your emotions, don't hate him. Do your duty, have faith in him, have faith in God, have faith in me, but don't hate your enemy. It's okay. When people are afraid, they do stupid things. तो कृष्णा is saying villain बुरा आदमी नहीं है, वो घबराया हुआ है. He's scared. He uses words, complex words, kshetragna and all that, but I'm giving you a simple answer. Everybody who behaves like a stupid person is actually scared. डरा हुआ है. उसको विश्वास नहीं है भगवान के ऊपर, इसलिए वो ऐसे foolishly behave कर रहा है. You don't become foolish. You have to be wise in the situation. You have to deal. That is Jnana Yoga. Be wise. Don't become stupid and clingy. छोड़ दो. छोड़ दो tension. Don't be angry with him. Don't be jealous with him. Don't be upset with him. One of the explanations for Gita is reverse the word. G-I-T-A होता है ना, just make it T-A-G-I. त्यागी. छोड़ दो. Let go. गुस्सा छोड़ दो. Not action. कर्म को मत छोड़ो, गुस्सा को छोड़ दो. That is Jnana Yoga. 3 lessons. Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga. Karma Yoga is do your job without thinking of results. What is Bhakti Yoga? Bhakti Yoga is have faith, trust कि दुनिया में कुछ तो है. There is somebody thinking about the big picture. And Jnana Yoga, don't hate your enemy. Let go of your anger, your hatred, जो काम, क्रोध, लोभ, ये जो होता है negative emotions को छोड़ दो. Forgive them because वो लोग insecure हैं. They are insecure. Insecurity makes people do stupid things. You don't be insecure. Right? These are the 3 things. So this is the summary of the Gita. Details mein to there are 700 verses, 18 chapters, written in complicated Sanskrit. If you remember this much, you will live comfortably, your exams will be good, you will be able to go through life very happily. ये 3 lesson याद रखो. Focus on action, not on reaction and results. Have faith in larger system, and remember, insecurity makes people do stupid things. So don't hate stupid people. There are no villains in this world. There are only insecure people in the world. When you do these 3 things, you will do dharma. You will help people and you will be a good person. Yeah. So that's my talk. Now we will do with question answers. Siddharth, if you can take
Yes.
it from.
Thank you so much, Devdutt ji, for sharing such insightful thoughts with us today. We have a full house on Zoom today, and many people streaming live from various Facebook pages. And I will not waste any time, and I will jump straight to the questions. So the first question comes from a student, a grade 12 student of DPS Varanasi, Anchita Roy. She says, give us an insight into your writing process, particularly for the book My Gita. Was it challenging to write it as you have arranged it thematically?
Okay. It's gone frozen. Is it? Can you hear me?
Sir, we can hear you. We can hear you, sir.
Okay. So what is, you have to remember that, the key trick of writing is to focus on the readers. And I realize that most Gita books are focused more on the Gita and less on the readers. They're trying to figure out what Krishna is trying to say, and they're translating those verses, and they're trying to explain it. And by the time you go from verse 1 to verse 700, you're completely confused. Because the writer is not thinking of the reader. The reader is not able to understand it when you read from one verse to the other. So I have reorganized the entire book to make it easy for the reader and to make it practical, and reorganize the verses in such a way that people understand. So the process, it is great fun because my aim is to help people understand. My aim is not to show off how much I know.
Right, sir. Superb. So another question. This is my personal question. Sir, in My Gita, you have talked about Arjuna's qualities that made him an ideal student, receptive and responsive, while Krishna was narrating the Gita. Could you share with our students some strategies or tips that will make them effective learners like Arjuna?
I think the thing is, we have to always ask ourselves, the whole Gita is based on the placement of a problem statement. Arjun says very clearly what is his problem, and that is why Krishna is able to give him a solution. Many a times when we are learning, we don't know why we are studying what we are studying. The best tip is always write questions down. What question are you trying to answer? And then you will learn things properly. If you don't write the question down, you will never find the answer. Gita's chapter 1 is only about questions. So if you want to learn something, always write questions down in the like what, when, where, why, how. Only then you start reading a book. Otherwise, if people read books and textbooks without writing questions, I always tell people write questions first and then start looking for answers. And suddenly everything falls into place. That is the learning tip that I would give people.
Right, absolutely, sir. So if you have to learn like Arjuna, you've got to have your learning objectives straight out there. Absolutely. So the next question comes from Miss Shraddha Singhania. She asks, does religion unite or divide?
Religion neither unites nor divides. It is like, does school unite or divide? Does family unite or divide? So some families stay united, some families get divided. Some friends stay united, some friends get divided. So religion can unite as well as divide. It doesn't matter. It's human beings who unite and divide, not religion. Religion cannot breathe. Religion is not a living organism. Humans are a living organism.
Right, sir. Absolutely, sir. So Madhavi Naidu asked, what is your view about Shakuni's role in Mahabharata, considering his past? Was he actually on the side of dharma or adharma in the real sense?
See, I think you have asked this question before the lecture, because now I've asked the question is Shakuni coming from helping the weak, or is he thinking of the big picture? Is he helping his cousins, or is he hurting his nephews, or is he hurting his nephews? Is he helping his sister or hurting his sister? Is he helping himself or hurting himself? If somebody is coming from revenge, then they are not following. That means they don't have bhakti, they don't have trust. If they're coming from revenge, then they are not following Jnana Yoga, because they're not understanding human insecurity. So Shakuni is only thinking of himself. He's not thinking of others. So you have to ask yourself, is that a person you would like to be? Someone who only thinks of himself and does not think of others. Have you behaved like Shakuni in your life? Instead of judging other people, we have to discover them inside us. Characters like Shakuni are not to be seen outside us. They exist within us. And you have to ask yourself, will you, in the same circumstances as Shakuni, behave as Shakuni did, or will you take a different decision? I think that is an interesting question, not whether Shakuni is right or wrong. Sitting in judgment of other people does not make us better human beings.
Right, sir. So nicely put. Absolutely. So there's another question. What is the difference between Bhagavad Gita and the work that you've published, My Gita? Schools today, are talking about 21st century skills for the students. The way you've applied critical thinking to your Gita is beautiful. How can students cultivate the skill and apply it in their day-to-day living? Will you please share some tips with our students today?
See, at a human 1,000 years, if you compare the world, let's say 1,000 years ago and today, the only difference is the technology has changed. In those days, people used to ride maybe chariots and they had bows and arrows. Today, we have cell phones, mobile, Zoom technology, webinar. Technology has changed, but has human emotions changed? People were jealous then, they are jealous now. They are competitive then, they are competitive now. They are collaborators then, they are collaborators now. They hated then, they hated now. So at an emotional level, human beings have not changed at all. And that is why books like Gita are still relevant. It is not to be seen, because we look at the costume and we think they're 1,000 years old. How will they be relevant? They're relevant because human beings at an emotional level have not changed at all. At an intellectual level, we have not changed at all. Only technology has changed. That is the only change that has happened. And therefore, these stories are always relevant. And we must apply this. We should always remember that even in the 21st century, books like these become relevant if you know what to look for. If you are looking for Brahmastra in the Mahabharata and you're looking for some nuclear weapons, then of course you will not find them. But if you're looking for solutions to your emotional issues, you will definitely find them.
Right, sir. So we've got to look for solutions in such books depending on the context. So Miss Swamini Wagh asks us, there's an argument heard that whether Mahabharata is mythology or history. What is your views on that?
If it is history, we need historical evidence. If you find historical evidence, please inform me about it. I have not found any historical evidence. That means archaeological data. What we have is a manuscript, the manuscript is about 2000 to 2300 years old. You can go, and if you travel to Pune, you can actually see the original manuscripts. There are about 200 manuscripts written in classical Sanskrit. You can read, it's the oldest reference to the Mahabharata. They tell of an old story. So 2000 years ago, somebody wrote it down and said, this is an old story. But beyond that, we have no other information. We don't have any archaeological evidence. Everything else is speculation. So if you study history and you ask a historian, how do you come up with a historical fact? He will say, I will need epigraphic evidence. I will need archaeological evidence. I will need a set of evidence to make it a historical. So that, and it has to be peer reviewed in a journal, in a proper historical, where 10 historians will sit and agree or disagree on whether the data is a fact or an assumption or an opinion. That is how you figure out. So please research all history textbooks which are peer reviewed. And if in those history textbooks written by historians, you find evidence of the Mahabharata, then Mahabharata is a historical thing. It is not based on whether you feel or I feel. It is a scientific process. If you are students of science, you must value evidence. If you're not a student of science, then you don't value evidence. Then anybody can say anything. Flying horses existed 1,000 years ago. Maybe it is true, but you need evidence. If you show me evidence, then they exist. So it is all about evidence. And you have to ask yourself how much you value evidence. Whether Devdutt Patnaik says it or not makes no difference whatsoever. Whoever says it, it is evidence which speaks in science. In science, a physics professor will not say that Newton's law is right because I said so. He will say, no, there is an evidence. We will go to the laboratory. We will test it. We will test the hypothesis. And then we will say that Newton's law is Newton's law or not. You don't say, I believe in the laws of physics, or I believe the Apple phone works. You say it works because it is based on certain evidence. So you find out, if you find the evidence to Mahabharata in a peer-reviewed historical journal, which is globally accepted, then it is history. Simple. I haven't found such a paper. But when you find it, please share it with me.
Absolutely. So very well put. So for it to be history, we need to really look for some evidence. Right. So Tarun Deshmukh asks, when we try to understand Gita, it is observed that there's no place for emotions. So how do we get rid of our emotions?
If you get rid of your emotions, you'll become a psychopath. So if your aspiration is to become a psychopath or a robo or a machine, then it's a great thing. You know, you can go and ask a surgeon to lobotomize the parts of your brain which create emotions. You'll become a nice robo or a psychopath. But I don't think that is a healthy thing. So please be careful about emotions. We want people to be emotional. It is just that we can't handle emotions because we can't handle pain and suffering. But life, as Buddha said, wherever there is life, there is going to be pain and suffering. And leadership is about handling the pain and suffering and rising above it and navigating through emotions, not rejecting emotions.
Right. Superb. So our next question is from Sudhir Sule. He asks, though Hindu preachings are a philosophy of life, what could be the rationale to project many of our gods or idols of faith as uncommon characters, like with 8 hands, a tail, or different heads, and likewise?
You see, imagine going to a temple with a child and you want to show that, oh, this is a hero and this is a god. How will you differentiate between an ordinary man and a divine or supernatural being? For example, when you're reading Marvel comics, how do you know a character is a superhero? He has to wear those funny costumes, right? He has to have those tight clothes. Superman, otherwise, how will you recognize Superman from Clark Kent? You only know he's Superman because he's wearing that blue suit, that red underwear, and he has got that cloak behind him. How do you recognize Batman? Because he's wearing those funny clothes. How do you recognize Joker? Because he's dressed in a funny way. In the same way, in the old days, if you want to recognize a god, you will say, Arey, he has 2 heads, 3 heads, 4 heads, 5 hands, supernumerary arms. That is how you figure it out. Or you will have certain symbols, like you will have a sun behind their head. That is how you know that this is the Buddha, because he has the sun like thing, a disc behind his head. So we have to constantly look at these are visual cues to help you identify supernatural characters. We use them in comic books, we use them in ancient art. It is no different. You cannot create a superhero without showing them in a funny costume. In the same way, you cannot show a god without showing them slightly differently, either flying in the air or with wings. Or how do you know an angel? If you look at, or if you read the Bible, for example, the angels don't have wings in the Bible. The use of wings in art to represent the angels started only in 500 AD. Before 500 AD, angels were not depicted with wings. So how will you recognize an angel? Today, when we say angel, we immediately draw wings. So that is how you represent supernatural human beings.
Absolutely. So our next question, sir, is from Master Adi Thole. Are teachings of the Gita are the teachings of the Gita repeated across different mythologies?
Um, I'm, uh, the teachings of the Gita are repeated across Hindu mythology. You will not find it in Buddhist mythology, you won't find it in Jain mythology, Islamic mythology, Christian mythology. Other mythologies will not have it. It is only found in Hindu mythology because two reasons. One, it deals with rebirth. Rebirth as an idea is found only in Indian mythologies, that is Jainism, Buddhism, Hinduism. Second, which is unique to Hinduism, is it speaks of rebirth as well as a supernatural God. These two ideas are unique to Hinduism, the presence of both rebirth and the presence of God. And therefore, these two ideas are found only in Hindu mythologies, in the Puranic traditions, and they are told in different ways. In fact, Mahabharata itself has 11 Gitas. One of those Gitas is Krishna's Bhagavad Gita.
Right. So I have many questions coming in. I
You
will
want
try
me
and.
to sort of just log off and log on, if you don't mind, and just sort of get it? If you give me 1 minute, then I can perhaps do it.
Yes, absolutely, sir.
Yeah, so give me 1 minute and I'll come back. Yeah, because the whole thing is, I think, hung.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just give me a minute, I'll be back.
So to all the viewers, all our students who've joined in, you can put your questions in the Q&A, and I will try my level best to ask most of your questions today. Devda ji would be joining us back shortly. So I would request all our students to actually go through this book. It's a lovely perspective that Devdutt ji has given to an ancient scripture, which is the Gita, and you would really enjoy it. And I have my copy, and it's really he's really used layman terms and used his perspective to simplify things for the readers. We are waiting, and sir should join any minute. So please bear with us, and sir should join any minute. So for all the students out there, Devdutt ji gave a great mantra today. So for all the 10th graders, 12th graders, sir gave a great mantra that you've got to score. All right, sir is with us. All right. We had a small glitch, but we are back. Okay. So quickly, I'll not waste any time, and I will start with the questions, sir, again. Okay, so we have many viewers from Kashi and Nasik. So my next question is to that, sir. In one of your interviews with Asiaville in January this year, you talked about your upcoming work on Tirth. Many in our audience are from Kashi and Nasik, two holy cities known for the Kumbh. Would you like to share something about your work, upcoming work?
Okay. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
We
So,
can.
My latest book is called. So it's called Pilgrim Nation. It's published by Aleph, and that book covers. Nashik is not in the list though. I have covered Kashi, and I've covered 30 more pilgrim sites. There are so many pilgrim sites in India, but we selected about 33 sites, and you'll find a book called Pilgrim Nation, which covers and basically takes you on a journey across India and helps you understand not just the stories of the places, but also the history of India, the cultural and the spiritual history of India. Because India is created by pilgrims. India is not created by politicians.
Right. So India is created by pilgrims and not politicians. Absolutely. So Kajal Tripathi asks, sir, how can we improve the bhakti yoga in today's scenario where people don't trust anyone?
By making yourself trustworthy. I think that is more important. Rather than saying that people don't trust people, work on how do you make yourself trustworthy. That is a missing quality. We are focusing on trusting other people, but how do we make ourselves trustworthy? I think that should be the focus area because that is under our control. Trusting other people are not in our control, but we can work hard to make ourselves reliable, make ourselves dependable so that people trust us.
Absolutely, sir. Making ourselves dependable. We have a question from our young and a budding dipsite. He's 6 years old, Vivan Mangwana. He asks, I have read many books from you like Kama versus Yama, Shiva plays Damsharaj, etc. I have a question about Narayana, not Krishna. What does the lotus signify in hand of Brahmaji and Narayana?
So lotus has different meanings in different places. It always varies in different places. So, for example, when Vishnu is carrying it in his hand, has a different meaning, and when he's sitting on a lotus, it has a very different meaning. When a god is sitting on a lotus flower, it means that even from a dirty place, that is muck, beautiful things can rise. So, even inside the worst situations, beautiful things can emerge from the worst situations. That is one meaning. The other meaning, when he's holding it in his hand, it means that be like a flower that offers nectar to birds and bees. So you should be the source of nectar so that others are attracted and they come to you because you are like a flower full of fragrance and nectar. So it has different meanings in different contexts.
So Vivan, I believe sir's answered your question. And the next one, sir, comes from Tushar Gautam. He asks how to distinguish between dharma and adharma in today's world, as everyone is keeping their own perception.
I don't think we should focus about the world. You should focus on your relationships with people around you and see in the relationship who is trying to dominate whom. Though if your people are trying to dominate and control other people, then they are following adharma. If they're having a genuine conversation, a heart-to-heart conversations, revealing each other's vulnerability, then you are in a dharmic space. So I think that, don't worry about the world. Focus on your relationships. Make a list of the 10 people who are most important in your life. And when you're having conversations, check how much vivad you have and how much samvad you have. If you're having vivad, you are in adharma. If you're having samvad, you are in dharma. Simple.
Very easily put, sir. It's amazing how you can put such difficult thoughts into such linear manner. Om asks, why did Krishna prefer to be the charioteer of Arjun rather than Yudhishthir, the older brother?
Well, I don't know. We'll have to ask him. Everything is not logically explained. It is never explained so logically. You just have to accept that maybe Arjun did not have a charioteer because Arjun may have asked him. What is more interesting is why does Krishna want to be the charioteer? Remember, you have a character called Karna who is ashamed of being a charioteer. Everybody calls him charioteer's son. The Pandavas also insult him by calling him the charioteer's son, which means they do not respect the people who are charioteers. Maybe this is Krishna's way of telling the Pandavas, don't disrespect professions. Because they were insulting Karna by calling him the driver's son, which means they were insulting the driver's profession. And Krishna is saying, maybe I should teach them a lesson by becoming a driver myself. Because you should have dignity of labor. They were displaying, the Pandavas were not behaving as a prince is supposed to behave. They should respect drivers, but they were insulting Karna. Instead of admiring the fact that he had worked hard and he's become an archer, they kept insulting him that your father is a driver, you are an adopted son. So they were not behaving like good people. And maybe this is Krishna's way of saying that, you know what, I'm going to be the driver. Now what will you call me? If you are insulting Karna, how do you treat me? And I think that is what Krishna's goal was. But I don't know. This is my speculation. There is no way to prove or disprove what I'm saying.
Absolutely. So time's coming to an end, but sorry, with your permission, our viewers have been really there waiting for you. So with your permission, we'll take 2 more questions if that's okay.
Sure, of course.
All right. So Siddharth Agarwal asks, Sir, Arjuna was fortunate enough to have a counselor at wartime that helped him take the right decision. Not everyone is so fortunate. How do we, the common man, decide to take riskful decision in our real life scenarios? What points should we consider?
See, what I would do is write down the question on a piece of paper and analyze the question carefully. It uses the word right decision. How do you know Arjun's decision is right? Krishna never uses the word take the right decision. There is no decision which is right and wrong. Every decision has a consequence. Arjun is a prince. He is supposed to fight a war. is he taking the right decision is not the point. He's taking a decision because he's not taking a decision at the beginning. He wants to withdraw from the battlefield. He doesn't want to take the decision. And he's being told, take a decision. And the right decision is, there is no such thing in this world as a right decision. Remember, during the war, Arjun has continuously doubts his decision to fight the war. He hesitates to kill Bhishma. He hesitates to fight Dronacharya. He hesitates to kill Karna. So he's really still, even after 700 verses, 18 chapters and a long lecture by Krishna, Arjun is not really confident during the war. So when you think of a question, don't assume the story. Look at the story carefully. Even after this entire lecture, Arjun is not a confident warrior. He continuously doubts himself in the Mahabharata war. And at the end of the war, Arjun wins the war, but his children die in the battlefield. So imagine if you win a war and all your children die. Is that so? Careful when you use words like right decision. Krishna is enabling him to take a decision. Whether the decision is right or wrong, how do you decide? In hindsight, he has won the war, so is it a right decision? But his children have dead. Is it a right decision? So, dharmas, it's not so simple. If books were so simple, then you wouldn't need Devdutt Patnaik.
Right, sir. So your writings have really helped us understand such difficult pieces. Actually, you were the reason why I started reading Gita. My mother had been pestering me, but you made me start read my Gita. Absolutely, sir. So my last question to you, sir, today. At DPS, we have several budding writers and illustrators. We have 4 publications. All of them are anthologies with short stories written by our students. Each one of these authors dreams to write bestsellers. Will you share with them some mantras that Devdutt Patnaik follows while writing his bestsellers?
See, I don't write bestsellers. I write books which become bestsellers. So the difference between writing nobody can write a bestseller. You can only write a book. And that is something that you need to remember. We always write a book. And when we write a book, we have to be honest and we have to ask ourselves, is it what the reader wants to read? Many a time people want to tell a story, but we don't focus on whether people want to listen to the story. Are we writing the story in a way that the audience is interested? So many people are too eager. You know, in Gita it is said, karma karo, phal ki chinta mat karo. But when you start thinking, I want to write a bestseller, you've already focused on the phal, which means you're not listening to Krishna. If you're not listening to Krishna, then what's the point of the Gita?
So to all the writers out there, to all the budding writers out there, illustrators, karma karo, phal apne aap aayega. Devdutt ji, I can't thank you enough to be a part of this webinar series, Breaking Barriers. I'm sure our students today have really enjoyed being in your company. All our students of DPS Varanasi, Nasik and Lava Nagpur must be delighted to be in your company today. A big thank you to all the attendees here on Zoom and all of them who've streamed live on Facebook and different streams. Take care. Stay home, stay safe. We are all in this pandemic together and we will come out of this soon. Thank you. Jai Hind.